everyone, this is Nina G, and today is May 25th, 2020, and this is another edition of the Comedy Time Capsule. And today, Sam Weber is joining me. Hello, Sam.
Hi, Nina. It's so nice to talk to you.
It's great to talk to you, too, on this hot afternoon in Santa Cruz and in Oakland.
It's a bit of a facilities question. Could you, turn down the heat, please?
Sure, let me work on that.
Thank you.
So,
Yeah, no, whether you get it or you don't, 5-star Yelp review. It's all good.
It is the weekend, and it's a holiday weekend, so the guy's off. So I'm guessing
All
not.
right, well, you know what? You'll still get a tip for Christmas.
Thank you. So can you share a little bit about what you do, and also if you have any plugs?
Yes, I'm considering getting hair plugs. I'm sorry, I shouldn't be doing bits. So my name is Sam Weber. Hi, everybody. I run comedy shows in Santa Cruz, California. For the last 6 years, I have been running a comedy show at the Poet and the Patriot. We do Monday night open mic every night for 6 years, the current time notwithstanding. And we've also got a First Friday showcase that has had a lot of rising stars, including your lovely host, Nina G. Excuse me. We've got we've had tons of people. We've had Kasim Bentley. We've had Dulce Sloan, who's now on The Daily Show. Sammy Obeid, who's now a Netflix host of a Netflix show. So we think that after the quarantine, the Poet's going to be reopened, and we're going to have a fun thing there to celebrate our grand reopening. I am also a special events producer for the Santa Cruz Comedy Festival, run by DNA, and you can see I'm wearing DNA's Comedy Lab merch on my hat here. Every October for the last 6 years, DNA has put on a comedy festival, and he always gives me carte blanche to run the strangest shows that I can possibly think of, and it's wonderful. Our past success stories include a walking tour of Santa Cruz and a brunch talk show hosted by me in character as Ellen DeGeneres. So this year we might be doing an outdoor comedy festival, TBD. These are the things that I have to plug. I feel like I should have stopped talking about 30 seconds ago.
No, you're one of the few comics who has stuff to plug. So,
Yay! I did it.
Yeah, so you made up for their time.
Yay.
So that's great. So tell me a little bit about how you got into comedy and how long you've been doing it and why you started.
Well, I had in high school a bunch of friends that were on the high school improv team at Menlo Atherton High School. It was called Lunatics. It's still active to this day, and all of my friends were on it, and I loved goofing around with my friends, but I had terrible stage fright, and I just wanted to be able to hang out with my friends and do this funny thing that they were doing. And so I never tried out for the team, but they were like, okay, Sam's cool, so I would be the ref for the officiant or whatever, for the high school improv shows with my friends. And after they all graduated, all of them started doing stand-up, and this was in Menlo Park, and the only place that we all knew where high schoolers could do stand-up on the peninsula was the Brainwash, the legendary open mic hosted by Tony Sparks at the Brainwash in San Francisco on Thursday nights. So they all started going up there, and I was like, well, if they can do it, I can do it. So when I was 17, I started going up to the Brainwash every Thursday night, and I went there for a month just to, every Thursday for a month to just watch and see what it was like. And one of my first comedy memories was being there and watching Jesse Elias, who is so funny, and he's doing, he's been on Kimmel now, and he's so funny. But he's got this very strange, awkward affect, and I mean, Nina, you met me when I was 19, so you remember that I had that same sort of like awkward, like uncomfortable thing going on. But I thought he was so funny, and so my first comedy memory was my second time going to the Brainwash just to watch, and I thought he was so funny. I said to my girlfriend at the time, "You should film him. This is so great." And so she probably still, I haven't talked to her in years, but she probably still has this video of Jesse Elias at the Brainwash in 2010 being like, "Please stop filming this. I'm really uncomfortable. I don't want this. Stop it."
Yeah, no, Jesse is one of my favorite people on the face of the earth, and he helped me write my book here. He actually helped me a ton with the book, and I feel very fortunate to have someone so talented.
That's
and
awesome.
So
Yeah, he's so funny. He's so funny, and my favorite thing about him is that every time he gets on stage, he looks like he's doing someone a favor. He's just like so unhappy on stage. He looks so just like, I want to, just staring at the ground. He's so funny.
And that is exactly that's totally it. Yeah, no, one of the funniest people I think that we've had come out is San Francisco comedy. So I love your first memories. Did you do San Francisco Comedy College?
I never did. I got a similar experience doing Bringers at the Purple Onion. From like 2011 to 2012, right before it closed, where I mean, there was this period of time when I was 17, 18, where I was like, this is what comedy is. You do the open mic at the Brainwash, and then you walk over to like do 2 Hyde, which is now, the setup, which is, it's now a wonderful show. But at the time, it was just like you do the sad open mics, and then you do a bringer show at the Purple Onion, and that's comedy. So I feel like I don't know. I did my own version of comedy college, but I never actually did the comedy college. Although I did you? Or were you affiliated with that at all?
I did for 2 terms, and then I was like, oh, you mean I could just do open mics, and it's the same thing. And the open mics aren't as friendly, but I didn't get into the comedy for friendly open mics.
Yeah. The San Francisco Comedy College is not WASC accredited.
No, by far. By far. No, and then when I was doing it, like my family would ask me like, "Oh, what are you getting? Like, is it a degree?" And I'm, well, no, you don't get it.
I'm getting paid in exposure here, but buddy.
Exposure. Oh my God. So you've been doing comedy for 10 years then?
Yeah, and it's complicated because I have some family members that will like go out of their way to be like, "So what's your real career?" Or like, just so when it's time to quit this hobby. And then I have some family members that are like take it so seriously that they'll reach out to me and be like, "Sam, you can't post that. This is killing your comedy career." And I'm just like, I want none of this. I don't know which one I like less. I just want to just hang it. But yeah, I've been doing it 10 years, and just started to actually feel like I understand what I'm doing, because I mean, like when I was 17, I was sad, but also I had nothing to talk about other than being sad. And so there there wasn't, and I understood the game of it. Like, you try to, no press is bad press. You try to like get out there, get people to see you, and some people will like it, and some people. And I'll never forget the first time I reached out to like a reporter, because I was 19 and I was trying to start a show, and I reached out to a local reporter for the Palo Alto, Daily News or whatever, and he interviewed me, and then I said, "What do you think?" And he said, "You know, if I'm going to run a story about someone that's supposed to be funny, the story can't just be sad the whole time." So like
Yeah.
the way I feel is that technically I've been doing it for 10 years, but I don't feel like I was good until like I don't feel like I was good enough to like actually make people laugh consistently until like 3 or 4 years ago. So I don't know. To answer your question, like technically, yes, I've been doing it for 10 years, but more realistically, I'm 27, and a 27-year-old only marginally has anything interesting to say.
And so you feel that comedy comes with life experience, it sounds like.
That's what I feel. I remember listening to like a Mark Maron podcast where he was talking about the best advice he had heard, and that it was go out and do stuff, because if you don't have experiences, then you have nothing to talk about.
Mm-hmm.
And that's why, and that's why I do the strange things that I do, like, the walking tour of Santa Cruz for DNA's Comedy Festival. This year, right before the shutdown, I had booked a 6 a.m. open mic at a dive bar across the street from the courthouse in Santa Cruz. Because that sounds, I mean, tragedy plus time equals comedy, right?
Yeah.
So doing in a 6 a.m. open mic at a dive bar across the street from a courthouse, that's a tragedy. But you give it some time, that's going to be funny,
Yeah. Well, and I've never heard of that. And that's the thing. And and I think this also leads in, but I don't want to go there yet, but it leads into a new weird thing you did, which I really want to hear about, but I'm not going to ask you about that yet.
Yes. Okay.
Okay. But so, and I was just right before you, I was talking to Josh Argyle, and he was saying that the way that he writes.
I love Josh Argyle. Well, who doesn't? I know that's a broken record to say I love Josh Argyle.
Right.
Please continue. Please continue.
He's such a good guy. He's such a great guy. And the thing is like, okay, who do I miss? I miss Josh Argyle, because it's not like he's online. It's not that you get him in any other form other than him doing stand up. But he was saying how the way that he writes is he just does goofy shit, that he just goes and does weird stuff. And he cited how he went rose petal picking with his girlfriend, and and you did that in shorts,
Of course. So, he only ever wears shorts. Drives me bonkers, but okay.
And so and then stuff comes out of that. So it kind of sounds like you also are looking for weird experiences to then inspire you.
Yeah, absolutely. And when I was testing out my walking tour of Santa Cruz idea for the Santa Cruz Comedy Festival, and this was in 2018, I had pitched DNA on it for a couple of years before he was finally like, okay, just show me what you're going to do first. And so I walked around downtown Santa Cruz, and wrote all of these jokes about everything I could think of about every single location in downtown Santa Cruz. Then I mapped out a route and picked based on the funniest jokes that I could. And before I pitched it to DNA and said, this is what I'm going to do, I happened to have my aunt and uncle and their two kids in town, and the kids are my age, and the aunt and uncle are, in their 40s, and I was like, or no, they're in their 50s now, but it was just like, okay, so this is a good, generational gap, and we can see what works. And I said, it's great to see you, let's go get breakfast. And we went and breakfast, and then I said, okay, now you have to be my guinea pigs. and and to their credit, it was very, very family of them. They did the whole 1 hour, mile and a half walking tour of Santa Cruz with me, and I tried out every joke, and I had the piece of paper with me, and I wrote down everything that didn't work and everything that did work, and they pitched me a few ideas. And you know how family members are like, you can use that in your skits.
Oh,
And so some I was like, yeah, that's funny, and I didn't do it. But some of them I was like, okay, that's good. I'll modify that and I'll put it in. But yeah, that's exactly it. Is just go out and experience something and try something that you're not used to.
And so, did you do the jokes based on historical facts or observations, or did you
Both.
make stuff up?
Both. And so the idea that the way that I pitched DNA on it was, I'm going to walk past every venue, because if anyone's listening that's ever been to the Santa Cruz Comedy Festival, Santa Cruz is a very long straight line. The strip is just, that's it. And so all the venues in the Santa Cruz Comedy Festival are along this, Pacific Avenue, and there's, you branch out on little side streets, but that's about it. So I said, I'm going to go along the main corridor and point out all the things, but then I'm also going to branch out and then find stuff that I have funny things to say about. So I kind of alternated between, like, this is something that I have to do to sell the thing on DNA, and then I'm just going to pick the stuff that I have the funniest things to say about, and some of it's going to be like, hey, look at that shitty mural, let's make fun of that. And some of it's going to be like, here's a historical fact about these buildings, and I don't remember any of it, and I wish I could, because that would actually be funny. But I remember it mostly, it was a cross between, like, because Santa Cruz is a historical, it was founded in the 1850s, and so there's some, like, cool stuff that I could point to, and then there's also, like, street signs that are misspelled, and I could just be like, there's that.
Okay, so it's kind of like a roadside attraction meets historical meets.
Exactly, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And so, okay, so we know how you created before this. How are you creating and writing after this? After COVID and the quarantine.
I should really be working on that. I've been trying to figure out, are you talking about, like, material or just in general?
Yeah. And the thing is I think what I'm getting from comics is, like, your focus kind of shifts, where it's just not your act, but then you're doing other things. Like, this is not my act, but this is how I'm spending that. It's the energy that I would be spending at open mics. This is what I'm doing. So what are you doing? Are you creating in the same way that you did, or has it changed?
I am struggling to figure out what the bar is going to be, because I know that probably 60 to 70% of the stuff that I was talking about before is nonsense that no one cares about anymore.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I have a 2-minute bit about working in an office and going down a Wikipedia wormhole, and that's one of the bits that I'm like, is that going to be relevant anymore? Because, like, are people still going to be working in an office? No. Are people going to be able to work from home? Yes. Will they still be fucking around on Wikipedia because they don't have, because the whole, like, when you work in an office, there's site blockers. You can only go so far to have fun, and so we would go to Wikipedia. But I don't know if that's even going to be relevant. So what I'm trying to figure out is what stories and bits that I have are still relevant, and I often do observational stuff, and I don't have any observations because I spend so much time here. I mean, this is my recording studio. I am in a box, and I spend so much time just, you know, sitting here playing guitar. So like, uh I think that I have to force myself to find new things where I can like interact with people. And Zoom shows have been helpful to like interact with people, but I'm not really clear where I'm going to find uh uh you know, individual like not individual but like real life community.
And in real life community, meaning a place to tell people jokes.
Yeah, like any sort of, the sociological term is the third place. Are you familiar?
I don't know the third place.
So the sociological conception of a third place is that the first place is the home, and the second place is the workplace,
Mm-hmm.
uh, and the third place is a community gathering spot. So a third place would be, I mean, in historical context, a salon, or a coffee shop. What America has done really well is building a lot of different third places, parks, comedy clubs, bars, restaurants, barbershops. We don't really have those anymore. We don't have third places anymore. And so, I mean, and that's what a comedy show is. A comedy show is a third place. And so that's a goal of mine, is to find a new reliable third place, you know?
And recently you experimented with that. And could you tell us about that?
So, as soon as the shutdown happened, my first thought was, how do we start up again in a safe way? Because like, my minor is electronic music, my major is film and digital media, concentration in digital media production. So I am acutely aware of how the world, the digital world, can connect us. And my immediate thought was, the drive-in is going to come back again. And so I partnered with a friend of mine. His name is Brian Snyder. He's a very funny young guy who, as soon as he turned 21, he started going to the open mics. And I said, why weren't you sneaking in? Well, like I was when I was 17. And he said, because I didn't want to get places shut down. And I said, okay, you fair
He's a
enough.
better person than you.
Fair enough. I'm selfish. But he's very funny, and he has a very polished sense of humor that I really, really like. And so I said to him, Brian, we're going to do a drive-in comedy show. And he said, okay, where? And I said, I don't know. Let's start scouting locations. So we didn't know what we were doing. We didn't know how we were going to do it. And we just went to the first place we could think of, which was the old drive-in comedy, or it's not comedy, the old drive-in theater, the old drive-in movie theater in Santa Cruz on Highway 1, that has, for the last 15 years, only been host to the Saturday Santa Cruz County Flea Market. And so we just drove in there and figured out where the electrical outlets were, and I've got a mixer and I've got a microphone. We figured we could plug it into one of them FM transmitters that you just have on your car, and we said, okay, let's start figuring this out. And we learned quickly that our FM transmitters on our cars were not very good, because I mean, you get the Bluetooth thing. Do you have one?
No, I don't think so. Or I might. I don't know.
It's one of those. It plugs into the cigarette lighter in your car, and it connects via Bluetooth, or you can plug in, a headphone, an aux cable, and it it transmits, the FM signals, to take over a specific station on your car, so that you can play, your music while you're driving around rather than listen to the radio.
Okay, yeah.
So we had that all set up, and then we called the company that was operating the Santa Cruz flea market to just be like, can we do a drive-in comedy show here? And they said no, and we said, how come? And they said, because we don't own it, Sutter Health owns it, and they will not allow it. And we said, oh Lord, that's a mega billion-dollar company. We don't have the lawyer money for that. So we pivoted, and we found a city parking lot, and we bought a stronger FM transmitter. And before I go any further, I should mention that this the technology that we found was not just because we went for it. We are not the first people to do a drive-in comedy show. The way that we found out exactly what FM transmitter worked was because there's a scene in Alaska. And by the way, my first question was, there's a scene in Alaska? But so this guy, Alex, he goes by Alex, just Alex. That's his name. He was a Las Vegas comedian. He moved to Anchorage, and he figured out the FM transmitter that can broadcast FM frequencies like 100 yards, 300 feet, and so he started a show where they just plugged everything through their mixer into the transmitter, and they had honks for laughs because there's nobody in Alaska, so nobody cares. And it worked, and they've been doing drive-in comedy shows since almost like 3 weeks after the shutdown.
Wow. Okay. And they talked with you, and they were consulted kind of.
Yeah, and so I as soon as I saw that video, we had been doing our research and all that on how to do it. But as soon as he told us how to do it, we were like, okay, all we got to do is build a stage to stand on and figure out what to do instead of honks for laughs. Because I mean, Santa Cruz is not Anchorage, Alaska. There's a population density going on. And we didn't want to get the cops called on us. So what we did was lights. You flash your lights instead of laughs.
Okay, that's good.
And
so, mm-hmm.
Well, what we learned was we should have told people to use phone lights instead of car lights, because I had to jumpstart 2 different cars.
And that was something that I was thinking about, because you are too young to know what it was like to go to the drive-ins. But there was a couple nights where my parents, that they accidentally left their lights on, and they would have to get the car jumped at like midnight. And it was before cell phones. It was the 70s, all that stuff. So, I was doing this interview thingy with Mike Bucci, who I think you've met him, right?
Love Mike Bucci. Yeah, he's done some of my shows before. Yeah.
And so spontaneously in the interview, he's like, hey, we should do a drive-in movie thing. And this was like 2 weeks before your thing. And so he's been planning it. So he's going to be doing one, hopefully, awesome. God willing, in Newark.
Well, I think it's been far too long since there was something fun to do in Newark. So
many people feel that way, I think. And so, do you think? Okay, let me ask you this: what did it feel like? Because the thing that comics are telling me is that they miss the stage. There's nothing that is a substitution for the stage. and they just want that. How did it feel to do your first show like this?
Very stressful. Do you remember the first time you did? Because you haven't done. Because we've all done Zoom shows, and Zoom shows are what they are. And I run some Zoom shows, and so I'm not going to say they suck, but you know what? They suck.
And say first why they suck. What are the sucky elements?
Look at me. Am I doing stand-up? I'm having a conference call. It's a conference call where no one's allowed to talk but me. And if you're laughing, that's okay. But if you're talking to someone, like, because at a comedy club, you can whisper. You like, if you're an audience member, you can just like whisper to your friend like next. But if you're on a Zoom show, I'm hearing you talk like, I don't like this guy's jokes. Can you go get another slice of baguette for me? And it's just like, I don't want that. Like, it just reminds me of my once a week I have Zoom family conference calls, and I just hear my dad, my mom bickering, and they think they're not bickering, but it's still just like, Joe, stop it, Joe. And it's just like, but it's not the same to do a drive-in stand-up show versus an actual stand-up show. But like when I was 17, 18, I started with all my friends from high school that we were all teenagers and we all wanted to do stand-up, and none of our friends could come to like the bars, the shows to see. We would just put on shows in our friend's garage.
Mm-hmm.
And the parents would just kind of turn the other way while we would like drink whatever we were drinking out of the red Solo cups. And we would have a PA in the garage, and the kids would just sit outside of the garage. And so this is the same ethos as that. Is it when I'm doing a show on Zoom, I'm not standing on a stage, I'm not talking, I'm not holding a microphone, I'm talking into this thing. And some of you are laughing and some of you aren't, and I can't hear some of you that are laughing because you're on mute, and some of you that aren't on mute are just blathering and I don't care. But when I'm doing stand-up, when I'm doing the drive-in comedy show, like, I'm standing on a stage, I'm talking to a microphone, I know it's going into your car, and when it's making you laugh, I can see that because you're flashing your lights, or if you're breaking the rules and you have your windows down, I can hear you laughing, but I can't hear you like yap to each other. And so
one of the rules was that the windows had to be up?
So the rules were, and we weren't closely enforcing it, but I mean, if your window's open, you've got to be, far away or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
But one of the rules was you got to keep your windows closed. You got to keep everything closed. You can drink what you want. I'm not gonna I don't care if you guys have beers in the car. I don't care. But you got to keep the windows closed. Flash your lights for laughs. But if you're gonna have the windows open, don't like go over to other people's cars or anything. And nobody did. Some people had windows open. Some people were like waving and saying hi to each other. But everybody was there to see the comedy show, and the comics were all standing near the stage, and everybody was doing the 6 feet.
Okay, so even comics obeyed.
I mean, the comics obeyed to the degree that they obey the light. Like sometimes, 6 feet sometimes turn into 4 feet, but like everybody was trying. And the headliner was Damon Ferguson, and there was a reason for that because he's a general practice lawyer, and my opinion was, if we're going to do this thing that flirts with illegality, I want to have somebody that can talk to the cops for me.
Okay, and the cops came, right?
The cops showed up during Damon's set, and they pulled up about 5 minutes into. So he was doing 20, and the cops came, uh, and we didn't really understand what they were doing there, and so everybody was like all tense all of a sudden because before the cops came, these rent-a-cops came, and I put my mask on. I went over to the rent-a-cop, they're the first alarm or whatever. And I walked over to them and I was like, "Hey, what's up, gentlemen?" And they're like, we're just bored." And I was like, "Okay, let's shoot the shit for a little bit. Let's hang out."
Yeah.
And then like an actual squad car, like, brr, but he didn't have the lights on or anything. He pulled in and he drove around the whole thing, and we were like, "Oh God, we're gonna get so much jail." Uh, and the cop just parked, and that's when I was like, "Oh God, I'm so glad that Damon's on the."
Yeah.
I'm glad I have a lawyer with 20 years experience just like sitting there. And the crazy thing is afterwards, they didn't do a thing. I let they just sat there, and I let Damon do his whole set, and then I let him, and then I said to everybody, "Get the fuck out of here!" Like, I don't. Everybody leave. We're packing it up. Hide the beers that you had. We're just getting out of here. And then as soon as everybody started to put their stuff away, the cop car just left. And I was like, "Okay, that's weird. I think they were just waiting. They were just trying to give us a signal to get out of here." And we didn't find out until the next day, because an audience member was a friend of the police officer that had pulled the squad car around. We got a text that said that the cop wasn't there to bust us. He thought it was a cool idea. He just wanted to enjoy some comedy. And everybody was like, "Well, you idiot, don't do that in a squad car." And so he said he was sorry, and he said, "If you do it next week, you won't have any trouble. Thanks for the laughs."
Oh my gosh. Yeah, so it's like, like in the 80s, kids would have parties and they'd be drinking, and then the cops come and then everyone squirms, like everyone goes. So it was like that, except in comedy.
Oh, exactly. It was my friend Caroline. You know Caroline Hawkins, right?
Mhm.
She's by the way, she told me, I told her that I was doing a thing with you, and she said, tell her, big fan of
Oh,
Nina G.
very
So
sweet.
I'll
Tell
pass
her
that
hi.
along. I will.
Yeah.
But Caroline, she's long been my like real life mentor, but her thing has always been screaming "Starburst" when the cops come, and I
Mhm.
say, "Caroline, none of your friends are that old. Nobody knows what that means." She means it means scatter. She's like, "Okay." So the cop pulled up, and she texted me "Starburst."
See, she knew. She knew.
But yeah,
Uh,
it's just like that.
so, any lessons learned from the whole experience other than about the cops?
Um, uh, it felt nice to know that um we can do something, and that if because it's very tedious the way everyone's created this black and white, like, if you're wearing a mask, then you're a sheep, or if you're not wearing a mask, then you hate old people, and but we've
It's
created
politicized.
yeah, everything's it's the exhausting thing about American politics is everything's black and white, and we found this middle ground where it's just like everybody has everybody can have common sense, and so you can do this. You just have to ask people to be respectful. And in doing this and finding that the cops were like, "Okay, you're doing it right. You're not endangering people." um that made me feel like there is a middle ground, and there's, it doesn't have to be like either everybody stays at home all the time or we all go on the beach all at the same time and have a party and say fuck the police. Yeah, like, there can be a middle ground where we still enjoy live comedy and you can still see your friends, and it's not, it's not this crazy like, what are you doing out here? It's just everybody's being respectful,
They're all in their igloos. And it's you don't know Bubble Boy because you're too young, but there is Bubble Boy from the 1970s where he was in his bubble. And it's Bubble Boy comedy. And
yeah, exactly. That's exactly what it was. And it was very fulfilling to have the first live comedy show since the shutdown, and have not felt irresponsible about it, because right before the shutdown I was still trying to keep shows running and everybody was like hammering me over the head, but it's like, this is irresponsible, you should not be doing this. And then the shutdown hit, and then I was just like, yeah, I have to rethink that. That wasn't cool. And doing this felt like I wasn't being irresponsible. Doing this felt like I was trying to, because, why do you do comedy? Do you do it just because you have to, or do you do it because you want to like make people laugh? You want to make people happy?
yeah, no, and also it's a communal experience. People, when they laugh, they will look at their friend right next to them, which is also partly why I don't always like going to a show with a friend, because then I feel pressure to like make eye contact and then laugh like that. Like I want to be focused. So I get a little antisocial when I do comedy or when I watch it. But yeah, no, it is a communal experience.
Absolutely.
And and that's why, I feel for the people who don't want to go to church, but as long as we can't do comedy, maybe you don't get to go to church, because it's the same kind of experience, whether it's uplifting or whatever. So yeah. And that's where I saw a church in Korea that had a drive-in service. And that's why I was like, oh, that could be comedy.
Yeah. And if you want any advice, I can send you the equipment that we used, and
I will tell Mike.
Yeah, and my roommate and I have been getting really into woodworking. I mean, well, he's a PhD student, so he has to teach every few days. He has to teach, and so right before the shutdown, we built this studio. And I mean, you can see I have my instruments all over the wall, and you can see behind me is the acoustic paneling. But he and I built. You can see this the studio desks that we built. Yeah. And so when I decided that we were gonna, when I said we were gonna do this drive-in comedy show, it was just like, okay, well, we got to build a stage. So he and I built a stage, and I'm happy to share the designs for the stage too. If you want to pass that along to Bucci, I could message him. But
okay. Well, and would you be, because this is going to go online, is this something that you might share with people across the world?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, that's the right thing to do, right?
Yeah. Okay, great.
It's not a big stage, and all of the information that I got was from people like Alex in Alaska. I saw what he was doing, and I was like, dude, I've been trying to do that for a month. How are you doing it? And he just immediately told me, and now we have live comedy in Santa Cruz again. So
okay, so let me ask you this. This is the thing I'm most concerned about. Do you wear a mask while you're doing comedy? Do you not wear a mask? Do you bring your own mic? Do you wash the mic afterwards? What do you do?
I ruined 2 mics figuring this out. I think I might have to buy some new mics. We started with everybody has to wear a mask. I was supposed to buy foam covers. So you see how this thing, whoop. I was supposed to buy a bunch of those for. Hang on, because I'm in my music studio. I can just pull it out. Not pull it out. You know what I'm saying.
So all of a sudden, this turned into a comedy thing.
It's we got Louis driving up in here. So we had these, and so I was supposed to buy foam covers for this, right? And the idea was to flip out the foam cover each time someone did a set. I forgot to do that, and so what I ended up doing was I work in safety and risk for the city bus, so I have a lot of masks and hand sanitizer. So what I ended up doing was between each comic, between me and each comic and me and each comic, I would slather hand sanitizer to absorb into the foam, because I mean this is just a foam little thing, and some of that got onto the actual microphone itself, so I have to buy new microphones. But my understanding was that you can just put new foam on each microphone.
Okay, so it's like a microphone condom. That's
exactly a mic condom. That's exactly right. I mean, I would put hand sanitizer on the microphone like body, like between sets. I would do this, and on the mic stand too, and that just that felt right. But that
and then sanitizing your hands afterwards, or people could wear gloves on stage. Any combination of that would be okay.
We didn't have anybody wearing gloves on stage, but anybody that wanted it.
That's Santa Cruz isn't gonna wear gloves on if they don't have to. So
yeah, but anybody that wanted hand sanitizer would could, and I would occasionally just walk around with my hand sanitizer bottle and just squirt people with it.
Okay, cool. That's great.
Because I mean, it's not funny if you do a comedy show and then people start fucking testing positive. That's where it's just like, this wasn't worth it. And the goal is to have a sustainable comedy show.
Yeah, no, you don't want your audience to, have enough if they walk, much less die. So you want to keep that safe.
It's a drive-in comedy show. You don't walk audience, you drive audience.
Drive audience, of course. So where do you think comedy is going to go in the coming months as we start to phase stuff in?
I think that more and more there's going to be spaces opened up for like public address systems. Just everybody has to sit like a few spaces apart. I think that the drive-in's going to come back. I think that's clear at this point. The drive-in's going to come back, but I think that people will want to see comedy, and people will be aware of the limitations of that. And I think that outdoor comedy is going to be popular. I think that places like DNA's Comedy Lab are going to succeed because have you been there? Have you done a show there yet? You have?
Oh yeah.
So
I've done shows there. I've done mics there. It's great. I love it.
So have you done the big room there?
No, I don't know if I've been in it or not. I don't think I've been in it.
If you've been, I mean, yeah. He has a big room, so it's a twin screen theater, and he has a small room that seats 180 and a big room that seats 350. And if I had to guess, I'd say that clubs like that will succeed because if you have a 350 seat theater, you can space out 100 to 150 people in that theater and keep everybody safe, but still have a packed comedy show.
Yeah, you're right. You're right. He has more options than a lot of clubs that would just scatter people around, which is also okay too, but he's going to have more capacity.
Yeah. Like, I don't know. I won't name any names, but there's a certain theater in the South Bay that's it's not a theater, it's a comedy club that's rather small, and I don't know how that particular comedy club might be able to do that. Yeah, exactly. However, Cobb's can seat 400 people under normal circumstances, so there's no reason that they can't put.
Downstairs,
Exactly. You can put 100 down, you can put 50 up, and you still got enough people to stay open and sustain.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you're right. Interesting. Do you think that our sensibilities will change? Did you notice that? Because you were talking about it earlier, like your joke about The Office. That will that not work now, or will oh yes, The Office? What a nostalgic idea! Like, is there gonna like what is the change? Because and part of this is that the reason why I'm doing these interviews is I became interested to know how humor changed after the Spanish flu or how it changed after the Black Plague. And there stand-up comedy wasn't around then. Stand-up comedy, if you think of it since Mort Saul and Lenny Bruce, relatively new. This is our
One of the
first.
youngest art forms.
What's that?
It's one of the youngest art forms.
One of the youngest art forms. Now, with AIDS, there was a pandemic that comedy was there, but it didn't reach everybody.
That's very. I mean, that's very wise of you to acknowledge that because it's yeah, that's sad. It never gets brought up, but that was a pandemic. It's just most of humanity doesn't feel like it needs to be acknowledged, which is sad. But I'm sorry, I just trampled over your thought because that was very fascinating. I never thought about it that way.
Yeah, well, and also, I mean, I am a product of someone who came of age as the AIDS pandemic happened, which is you talk to anybody in their 40s. We were so afraid of sex. Like Snoop Dogg was rapping about condoms. Like we were so afraid of sex.
Oh yeah, they released him and Wu-Tang released an album called America is Dying Slowly. It was an album called AIDS. Yeah.
Yeah, and Salt and Pepper were talking about safe sex and like just it was just we were inundated with it in a way that is similar. Like there are some parallels, but also like when I talked to social workers who worked with people that had HIV and AIDS at that time, there's very gallows humor among them because they were seeing some shit. And do you think that, and like, I don't think everyone is seeing the equal amount of shit that, at least yet. I think people in New York may be experiencing it in a different way than people here.
Yep.
Some communities more than others. But do you think that humor, the sensibilities of humor will change?
I think that I'm very fortunate to be in Santa Cruz County, which has one of the lowest infection rates and one of the lowest death rates in the world. So it creates an ironic distance for people in this scene, which is really hard to quantify because it's just like nobody knows anybody that has it. Nobody knows anybody that's been affected by it, and so it's easier to joke about. I think that if I was in New York, where like everybody knows somebody that has it, or everybody knows somebody that died of it, uh it's still fertile ground. I mean, how long did it take for 9/11 jokes to land?
Yeah.
It's still there. It's always going to be a fertile ground. It's just like how you do it. That's always been my approach. Is anything can be funny. Is it going to be funny? Probably not. I mean, like, there's so many like miserable topics in our culture. Like, I mean, unfortunately, one of the most hacky uh grounds is, jokes about sexual violence. And are there jokes that can be funny about that subject? Sure. I mean, it requires not like punching down, not to use a cliche, but, and I don't know what punching down is in the context of fucking coronavirus, but
Well, like I did a joke last night. I did Samuel Bade's show, and I have the joke about somebody on YouTube saying that I'm brave for stuttering. And traditionally, I have said, "In your face, not 9/11 first responders." Last night, I substituted in your face COVID healthcare professionals. And just to see, like, okay, can I now put in these people who are being the unsung heroes? And I think it worked. I also stuttered on it, so like I'm not sure. Like it was my first time doing it, so it wasn't fluent yet.
that makes sense.
Yeah, so I don't know how it went, but I also felt like a little bit of tightening up because people don't understand where I'm going with that joke. Like, they don't really think that. So yeah, I think it's. I mean, I think there's going to be a saturation of quarantine and COVID jokes, but
yeah, I think.
But from there, will people want to laugh, and what will they want to laugh at? Because if you're going through death stuff, you may want to hear about death, maybe not the death that you experienced, but somebody else's. I don't know. We'll see.
Yeah, and I think that what I was trying to get at was just context, and I mean that's exactly what your point was it's all context. And as long as you're not like making a victim, as long as you're not making a victim the butt of the joke. I mean, like, I think yours is funny because you've got stuttering, and you're juxtaposing it against, and not to, let me mansplain your joke to you, Nina.
Bring it on.
You see, let me tell you why you're funny. No, I mean, like, I think that makes a lot of sense, and I think that's kind of the sort of thing that we're going to be looking towards, is not like the punchline is COVID-19, but the punchline is like the human experience around it.
And that's where that is shaped by different people's perspectives. And that's where if you have a unique one, that's great. If you're just doing the same thing that everybody's seen on the internet, toilet paper jokes, whatever. It's not gonna be
we don't need to just do stand-up about that. Yeah.
So, well, is there anything that I haven't asked you that you think I should have asked you, or other things that you wanted to talk about?
Give me like 30 minutes to think about it. And no, I think that we've had a fun, wide-ranging conversation. If you could tell me and Dave to suck it, just because I know that you're close with him.
Yes.
I think that would be funny.
Okay.
Nothing
Very well.
against him. Love him to
Uh-huh.
death. I just think it would be funny.
And
No,
the thing is, I think that he does my intro and my outros on this because I don't have fucking patience for that. So he's just going to find this on his own. And
Yay!
you directly addressed him. So that's
Fantastic. Excellent. This is great. No, I think that this has been a fun open exchange of ideas.
it has.
I thank you so much for even inviting me on to talk about this. It was really fun, and it was also nice to really talk to you because we've known each other for so long, and I don't know that we've ever had like an hour-long actual conversation with each other, and I think that's really cool. And I feel like I got to know you better, and I'm really happy about that.
Yeah, no, I am too. Thank you. And thank you for getting comedy out there and being, I think, one of the first ones.
Hey, it was, it's all been just because of the people like Alex in Alaska. Alex, just Alex. If you're, I don't. That is his stage name. So if you're listening and you wanna find out who that is, Alex, just Alex on Facebook and Twitter. He's the one that guided me, and I am happy to stand on the shoulders of those that came before me. But yeah, I really hope that this can keep growing and we can sort of keep trudging back to normal.
Yeah, well, thank you, and I appreciate your work, and I think that's it. Thank you, Sam.
Thank you, Nina. I have your book on my bookshelf. You signed it to my girlfriend, and she read it, and she's a huge fan.